So Tristan,
Yo,
I'm Andy. It's lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for jumping on.
you are completely fine. It is wonderful meeting you as well. I must say, as a man from America, I love your accents.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
effortless. And I like
Yeah.
yours too.
Well, thank you.
Um, so, a little bit of background. We vaguely met on Instagram, and I was really inspired by your story because you had a stroke and you've fully recovered and it looks like you're stronger than before. So amazing. Well done. And I would love to hear more about that, but I'll give you a tiny bit of background on myself. I was stuck in long COVID, fatigue, brain fog, anhedonia, you name it. Like my dopamine system was not working at all. And I thought I had dementia, and I was basically down to one brain cell. And it seems like some of the stuff that I did to dig myself out of it might have been similar to what you did. So I'd love to hear about the similarities between our journey and extra things that you have done. And hopefully we can share this with the world.
Yeah, so let me just share a brief summary of my story. Um, Skipping all the childhood trauma, we're just going to get straight to the adult stuff. Um,
And same with me.
yeah, yeah, it's a good character development. Um, so I worked my entire life to be a college athlete. My favorite sport was soccer. I loved running and got to play in college. However, I kept a lot of bad habits from my childhood. Let's just keep it like that. Self sabotaging habits. And because I never learned how to love myself. Actually, I learned to hate myself from an abusive man that was in the household for most of my childhood. Okay. Um, yeah. And into sophomore year, well, 11th grade, found out I have a brain cyst. Doctor said it shouldn't grow. I can keep playing soccer, just watch hitting the ball. End of sophomore year, I got hit super hard in the head with the ball. I caught a major concussion and went to see a neurosurgeon. That neurosurgeon said that the cyst had grown and blocked off spinal fluid flow, so I was developing hydrocephalus and I would be in a coma within 6 months. Looking back on it, he was definitely fear mongering. He was going after the cash rather than wanting to service his patient, right?
Mm.
Ended up having numerous brain surgeries. Well, the first ever surgery at mid May was released the next day. Had to relearn how to walk a little bit, and I was back to full action within a day.
Mm.
Caught meningitis, that's a whole nother story.
Mm.
And then I was back in the college town within 4 months or the next month. I was getting back in shape for soccer, and early September, I woke up in the middle of the night with a fire pain. Just imagine um, somebody put a furnace on and it combusted, and that's inside your body, right? It was going from the beginning of the shunt in my head to the end of the shunt in my abdomen. The shunt is
Mm.
there to drain spinal fluid. Okay,
Wow.
so I caught an infection. I was going septic, and my roommate rushed me to the hospital. I remember nothing about well, very little about my time in the hospital. That abdominal and neurosurgeon caused a brainstem stroke, caused me to lose full function of my left side, wiped my memory for at least a few months. I didn't know who I was, didn't know who my family was. Um, and yeah, during my time in the hospital, though, or my body's time in the hospital, should I say, I was where I like to call the dark, quiet abyss. Um, I have two ways of describing this. The first one is close your eyes. What do you see and feel?
Yeah, interesting because I see a retinal after image of the screen and I
Yeah.
feel my body.
Okay. So, how about nights when you don't remember your dreams? What do you
Mm.
remember about your dreams whenever you wake up?
Sometimes just a weird emotion, sometimes a feeling of dread, but I don't know what happened or
Ooh,
why.
that's good. That's good. So, what I was going for is nothing.
Okay.
See
Gotcha.
nothing, feel nothing, right? So it's just absolute. If you're able to picture it, I get emotional thinking about this because it was so
Mm.
peaceful. Seeing
Oh,
nothing, feeling nothing. It's like I was in a void, right? Where, let me fix my camera.
you were in a what? Sorry.
There we go. I was like in a void, right? An abyss.
Uh-huh.
It
But
was,
yours was a pleasant abyss almost.
yeah, so
Wow.
absolutely nothing, right? So this has actually got me thinking, and this is a tangent we can revisit after I mention this, um, or after I finish my summary. I've started thinking that the darkness is actually the good and the light is actually the bad. And the
Okay.
reason why I think this is tied into my story. So I was in that place where time didn't exist and I was there. I was not conscious during that time. I wasn't aware. I just remember being there. I don't know if I was the space itself or if I was in the space. However, so peaceful. Eternal bliss,
Mm.
right?
Wow.
I started becoming conscious to a body that wouldn't work. I have double vision from the surgeries and the stroke, and I thought I was in a form of purgatory. I thought I
Mm.
was waiting to get into heaven or hell, and I lived with existential dread because it seemed like I went to bed in the apartment that I was staying with my roommates or my teammates in, and I woke up at my grandparents' house. My body wouldn't work, and I couldn't see shit. Right?
So you couldn't
Um,
see and couldn't move.
Basically. Well,
Wow.
actually, I could see too well because I saw double everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
I made a relatively quick recovery. Well, according to the hospital, had a brainstem stroke, and I was told that I would never walk, talk, or function in society again.
Mm.
Within 6 months, I regained very basic function, and my mental health was absolutely in the gutter.
Mm-hmm.
I lived like that for over 2 years,
Mm.
and then I decided I wanted better for myself.
And what was
So
the impetus for you to make that decision for yourself? How did that come about?
yeah, so I graduated college, and I moved back in with my grandparents, with my family at the time, and I have a baby sister and a little sister. Little sister's 10 years younger than me. Baby sister is 21 years younger than me. And I wanted to, one, be a good role model for them, and two, become the man that will be a good father for my kids because
Mm.
I had a great example of what not to do growing up, multiple great examples. And
Did you have
yeah,
children at this point, or your future kids, you mean?
future kids. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm 26 now. And yeah, I'm, I look forward to being a dad. Anyways,
Interesting,
um,
because your sort of drive or purpose or meaning is similar to mine, in that the hell that we've been through, we want to share some of the light at the other side with other people.
yeah, it's actually inspiring hitting rock bottom, looking back on it.
Mm.
That was the most inspiring thing that happened to me,
Mm,
you know?
same. Mm-hmm.
And one thing that really helped change my perspective on that, one reason why I decided to stay alive, was I stopped asking why me and I started asking why not me, right? So
Great.
why wouldn't it be me who goes through all of the brain surgeries and the brainstem stroke and losing everything that I worked my entire life to build? Why wouldn't it be me, right? Why wouldn't I be the one that could show everybody what's possible? You know?
Amazing. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And so the stuff that you went through, it sounds not only extremely painful, excruciatingly painful, but also heartbreakingly, tragically lost. You know, your
mhm.
soul. Well, for me, it was kind of like I also felt my soul was lost in purgatory, because I didn't have. Well, I had physical fatigue, so I felt like my whole body was made of concrete every day. but also my brain cells just weren't me. I just felt
Mm-hmm.
like I was in the void, but not in a pleasant way at all. I had a glimpse of not being in the void. So I was conscious that I was basically unconscious, which was very horrible. But it sounds like nothing compared to the physical pain that you went through.
I would like to say, please never compare what you've been through to what I've been through, because there's no way that I could experience what you went through, and there's no way that you could experience what I went through. And what we've been through is real to us, right? And so what you've experienced is just as valid, if not more valid to you than what I've experienced. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a very different thing. I also went through a rock bottom moment where I just knew I had to do something. Like nothing was working, and it was
Mm-hmm.
going to literally kill me if I didn't like step
Yep.
the fuck up and do
Mm-hmm.
something hard. And I was lucky to come across something inspiring by Stephen Pressfield, and he says to turn pro and to do the really, really, really hard stuff first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, luckily, because I had a dopamine problem, luckily that's what worked, because I had to force myself to do hard things, even though it already felt so hard. I didn't think I could
Mm-hmm.
do anything more. I didn't think I had 1 ounce of effort or, energy in me, but I had to find it somewhere and use it and reward it and just grow from that. And it was absolute baby steps. And it felt like I had to teach myself how to get out of bed again, brand new, how a baby would learn how to get out of a bed. And it sounds like that's probably way even more so what you had to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very similar to what I went through. When you said that you reached a point where you had to get off your ass and actually do stuff, or else it was going to kill you. Yeah, I was the same way. I,
Mm.
I moved back in with my family, and I love my family. However, I just felt like I was trapped, trapped in this
Hmm.
body and all that. And it's so true. Doing the hard thing first thing in the morning has helped dramatically change the way I perceive my life. So I used to be very quick to anger. I used to get
Mm.
so mad at people who went under the speed limit, and I used to have such intense road rage.
Mm.
When I started taking cold showers first thing in the morning,
Mm.
let me
Me too.
tell you,
Mm.
hell yeah. My perception of the issues in my life dramatically changed. It's like everything immediately lessened, right? Um, it's actually a blessing. It's the best natural antidepressant that I can think of.
Yeah.
That combined with diet, and then if you exercise, it's cool. But like cold showers, I would say have played one of, if not the biggest impact on my mental and overall health.
Great.
Yeah.
From a dopamine perspective, because I ended up writing a book on dopamine because
Mm-hmm.
these things worked so well for me. I had to research why so that I could be confident to tell people, look, it does work, and here's the research.
Mm-hmm.
And from a dopamine perspective, when we push dopamine low on purpose with hard, challenging, difficult, and unpleasant things, then it may rise. And our dopamine is our motivation and our physical energy, our mental energy, and our mood. It's all of those things. So if we push it low, then it may rise like a helium balloon. But if we're only doing the things that are easy, pleasurable, dopamine enhancing, like coffee, sugar, the easy stuff, then it can actually flatline like a balloon at the ceiling. So the only way to pull it down is with deliberate effort. And it seems like that's what we've both done. We've both given ourselves a dopamine jump start in that way.
Yeah, it's like there's this one man on Instagram. I forget exactly what his account. I think it's like Devin Levet. He runs Sweet Honey Farms. Um, he described it in this way. There's, and I'm loosely paraphrasing. There's type one and type two fun, right? Type one fun is when you're out having a good time. You're sitting there playing video games or drinking, whatever. Type two fun is whenever you put yourself through challenging shit and you hate it until you get done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're both a dopamine rise, but
Mm-hmm.
one of them is external dopamine, the drinking and the partying and whatever, and then you get tolerance. but you don't get tolerance with the second one that you described,
Mm-hmm.
because, like a wave, we're moderating the ups and downs instead of just looking for the highs all the time, like we're addressing the lows. And
Mm-hmm.
like any wave, it will go up and down. And it's unsustainable to expect the external stuff to keep our dopamine high. It won't, it's going to crash, and then we're going to feel bad.
Oh yeah, it's like instant versus delayed gratification. That's how I perceive it, at least.
Sorry,
It's
could you say that again?
Yeah, so instant versus delayed gratification. So like instant gratification, going out, partying, stuff like that. Delayed
Yes.
gratification, cold shower. You suffer for a short time. Well, suffer for a short time,
Yeah, you
and
do.
when you get done, you have so much more enjoyment in life. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and like doctors aren't telling us this. Like they go, oh, yeah, go and exercise. But they don't tell us how, when, and why it works. And like what you and I have been through, we're both proof that, this works.
Yeah, I get really passionate whenever doctors get brought up and what they do and don't tell us because, like I said, I was told that I would never walk, talk, or function again in society.
And
I
thank
was,
God you challenged that.
oh yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Steph posted a video about this a while ago. She said that doctors, when they make those assumptions, it has nothing to do with the individual patient. It has everything to do with statistics.
Yeah.
Are we statistics? No.
Hell no.
We are humans. We have, in my opinion, unlimited capacity to heal. As long as we
Yeah.
get out of our own way, as long as we give our bodies what they need to heal. So, like proper nutrition, which can dramatically boost dopamine, exercise, cold exposure, getting sunlight, putting your bare feet on the ground, just doing things that help your body feel better. That way you can feel better physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually.
Mm.
It's,
And being comfortable in discomfort is an amazing skill to learn because you build up the self trust.
yeah, I believe the term that I heard a couple of years ago was you can either deal with the misery of uncertainty or deal with certain misery, you
Mm.
know?
I like it.
Yeah.
So you came from a background of trauma, as did I. And it seems in my research that glutamate plays a really big role in how the body holds on to not only negative emotions, but also pain, and especially chronic pain. Now, there's a lot of research on journaling for emotional release,
Mm-hmm.
and the technique is to just sit and write down everything we feel, every emotion that we feel, even physical pain if that's present as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not only does it help us release and go towards all this hard stuff, because going towards activates dopamine, whereas withdrawal, avoidance, and fear activates glutamate. Um, in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
And so journaling has been shown to be really positive. Have you experienced anything like that, like with emotional release?
So journaling has helped get the thoughts out of my head and onto paper. I will
Mm,
say I've worked with what they're called story work coaches, if you know what that is.
no.
And that is a billion-dollar industry just waiting to blossom.
Okay.
So there is this coaching company called Enlifted. They teach this way of approaching different stories that we tell ourselves. So like negative stories, and it can even work for positive stories, like reframing it and either amplifying the positive stories or turning the negative stories into positive. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the I've had experiences with Dave Robinson and Chase Tollison, who is now my coach for getting my coaching gig started or off the ground. And let me just say that story work absolutely phenomenal, especially when you do it with a coach. Because yes, I've had some emotional release just journaling. However, story work, I have broken down into tears. I've had puddles on the floor so many times from
Mm.
working through the very intense and painful stories from my past. And Chase there helping me reframe them and turn them into positive. And yeah, it's magical. It's beautiful.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed that I used to do was I used to tell myself worst case scenario was the more likely outcome. And
Hmm.
then, in a similar way to reframing, I started saying, well, why not best case? Why not, instead of, all this bad stuff about to happen, why not the best stuff about to happen? Because they're equally likely. Why am I focusing just on the negative? Why don't I just assume the most, pleasant outcome and work towards that? And so I think in a similar way, I found a lot of joy and just less anxiety, in that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like I heard a term. It's a what if the good shit? Because we
Mm,
all what if the bad shit all the time.
uh-huh.
If we
Yeah.
focus on the good stuff, if we what if everything could go right, that will put the reticular activating system onto that, and it'll start searching out because there's a confirmation bias,
Mm,
and so our subconscious automatically searches out things to prove us right. So if we think what if the good shit, then even whenever quote unquote bad things happen, we could still find the needle in the haystack, the light at the end of the tunnel, because
yeah.
we're focused on that one good thing.
There's a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is closely related to our liking. So, whereas dopamine signals the wanting and the drive towards the thing, GABA is what signals the liking of the thing. And in studies, they've found that substances that activate GABA, like ketamine, not only can enhance mood and remove depression, but can also assist people who have paralysis in the body because GABA is also a signaling molecule for sensory feedback. And sensory feedback is what a lot of people with paralysis are missing. So they think that it's the motor movement, the outgoing signaling from the brain, which is the dopamine signaling that is missing in the motor cortex, but it's often actually the feedback mechanism. So the body is trying to move, but the feedback says failure. Whereas GABA says success because it means that it signals that dopamine has gone up and has been a successful rise towards the more pleasant or more desirable outcome. So GABA is a really interesting neurotransmitter, both for mental health, but also for movement. So did you find that when you were learning to do movements again, that you had to insert some form of success? Did you have to tell yourself what I'm doing is successful? And did mindset play into that?
So I will preface this by saying that during a majority of my physical recovery, I was in that dark, quiet abyss or void. My body did the work while I was out of my body. Um,
How
However,
did your body do the work if you weren't there?
I
Do you
can
mean the
only
healing work? The healing?
the physical, like the physical work, like moving and stuff. I believe that my subconscious was in control of my body at that time.
Oh, I see.
I
Yeah.
have no idea, to be honest. That's just a guess, right? Um, I could have been in my body, and the repeated trauma to my brain and all the drugs that I was on could have just like made me forget. I don't know. However, um, when I
So
what
sorry, were you going through physical rehabilitation, but you felt like you weren't even there mentally? Am I understanding
mm, no.
how was your body recovering, but you sort of weren't there? I'm not quite
Yeah,
following.
like I said, I believe it was my subconscious that was in control of my body. I honestly have no idea. I remember snapshots, like 3 or 4 snapshots, like seconds of my time in the hospital over the month and a half, 2 months that I was in the hospital. Other than that, all I remember was the dark, quiet abyss.
And were you moving about at all, or were you just stuck in bed?
And those little snapshots.
Yeah, in the rest of the time.
So one of them, I woke up in the middle of the night in my room or in the hospital room, and I sat up, saw that there was a sign across from the bed. It said, "Please do not get up without a nurse's assistance." It wasn't clicking in my mind, the repeated trauma to my
Mm,
brain, all the drugs that I was on. So
mm,
I went to go to the bathroom, and I fell against the wall because my left side wouldn't work. And so I
mm,
followed the wall to the bathroom, sat on the toilet, I went to wipe. I leaned to my left side and I fell off the toilet and waited 30 minutes to an hour for however long for a nurse.
Mm.
The other two times, I believe I was wheeling back for a surgery. That's all I remember.
Wow.
Um, when I started becoming conscious in my body, though, I was doing in-home therapy, occupational physical, and after I had gone through the denial and the anger and stuff like that, I started looking at my left side as if it was like a baby, right? I was cheering it
Right.
on whenever it was started to do things better, and
Mm.
I was forgiving and I was consoling whenever it failed, right? And that
Amazing.
helped improve my recovery a lot, because it
Hmm.
removed the negative connotation for failure, quote
Right.
unquote. You know?
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I've read other accounts of people who have recovered from stroke, and what some of them have done is restrain the more able side. So it really forces the other side to move, because we
Mm.
want to take the easy way and use the easier side. But if we can, I guess, delay gratification of that and force discomfort, that other side has to sort of pick up some of the slack. Did you find that at all?
I honestly have no memory of doing that. That's a really good idea, though. I do remember the abusive man. Um, Whenever I was early in my like becoming conscious, I was down at mom's and he randomly threw a folded up pair of socks at me, and it caught me off guard, and I caught it with my left hand, and my left arm wasn't working too well at that time. And like I caught it and I looked at it and I was shocked, and like my
Wow.
everybody cheered, and I was just like, what? And then I tried to move it myself and it would barely move, and I was like, what in the world was that?
Wow,
But like,
you have just sparked something in my memory. I don't know if you saw the film Awakenings with Robin Williams. I actually referenced this in my book. So these were post-viral encephalitis patients from the 1918, I believe, Spanish flu. So were they had very low or at least dysfunctional dopamine. And in the movie, so they were all hospitalized in almost a vegetative state, all of these people with encephalitis.
mhm.
And when somebody would throw a ball or object towards them, they would come out of their apparent stupor and be able to catch in front of the face the object with just a little spark of adrenaline. And adrenaline is
Hmm.
a precursor to dopamine, or is it dopamine is the precursor to adrenaline? I forget which way around it is, but they're really closely chemically linked. And so that's interesting because that makes it also almost sound like there might have been a little spark of adrenaline for yourself that sort of switched some dopamine into gear.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that as well is I didn't have glasses at the time, so I was still seeing double. And so that was pure reflex. The reason why
Mm,
I caught that. I
mm.
Yeah. And that's a really great. Wow.
It's a
Huh.
cool movie. If you get a chance to watch that movie,
Mhm.
there's also it was by or based on a book by Oliver Sacks, and Oliver Sacks was an amazing doctor who it was way back in I believe the 60s or even earlier. He would document these cases of brain problems, and the science hadn't caught up, and he knew that there was all these links, so he was just documenting what he saw. But now looking back, there's a lot of sort of evidence of how dopamine played into a lot of these ailments, and GABA as well. But at the time, no one really knew what was happening. But now, in retrospect, we can sort of see all these brain injuries and brain problems and how they manifested.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love how knowledgeable you are on all this stuff, because I knew about GABA whenever you mentioned it, and I'm bringing us back to this because I didn't know. I like there's this brand called Newtopia, and they have a GABA enhancer, or they have a couple like they work on enhancing different chemicals or processes in the brain, and Yeah, so far you've given me a lot to think about.
Well, interestingly, with GABA, for most cases, I wouldn't really recommend taking external GABA because we can
Hmm.
boost GABA internally. Same as with the tolerance that you can get with
Hmm.
dopamine, you can also get it with GABAergic drugs.
Hmm.
So things like yoga, meditation, mindfulness have all been shown to raise our GABA internally and naturally because GABA is liking. So what we can do is do things we do not like, and again, like a wave, when we push it down, it can naturally rise. But for some people, they need an instantaneous boost in GABA, just to sort of jumpstart the system. But then
Hmm.
they'd be better off to naturally use the body and behavior to influence the neurotransmitters. So there's still a lot to be learned, but there's also a lot we can glean as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And going back to the cold showers, one way that I successfully reprogrammed my subconscious was I would step in the shower, and as soon as I turned the cold water on, I would say, I'm doing this because I want to love myself.
Cool.
I'm doing this because I want to love myself. And as soon as I got done, I would celebrate. I would just celebrate, right? And
I
then
love it.
eventually it started turning into I'm doing this because I am starting to love myself. And then eventually I'm doing this because I fully love myself, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that delayed gratification
So I
makes
think what you've also done, you've boosted your dopamine in two ways. One, you've pushed it down by the hard and challenging things. Once you got out, it rose because it would
Mhm,
just relief actually raises dopamine. But then because you celebrated, you added an extra level of dopamine rise on top of that. Like you gave yourself a dopamine reward because
mhm,
the order that has to happen for dopamine to work properly is effort first, then reward, and then rest, because obviously if we give a dopamine reward to inactivity, we get more inactivity. Like anything, a dopamine reward just rewards and repeats what just happened, the same way as we train a pet. We give it a
mhm.
dopamine reward when it does the sit or when it does the correct behavior, but giving ourselves dopamine after inactivity just makes more inactivity. So what you did the activity, you lowered your dopamine, you let it rise, and then you rewarded it. So everything in the correct order. So well done.
That's awesome. Hell yeah.
Mhm. So, what tips would you give to someone who's extremely rock bottom stuck right now, just from your own personal experience?
Get comfortable getting uncomfortable. Um, I look at comfort as it is best when I'm reading a book. It is best when I'm sleeping. Other than that, I would prefer to seek out uncomfort, if that makes
Me too.
sense. So,
Yeah. Only thing that saved my life, learning to seek the uncomfortable stuff
mhm.
at the time I least wanted to.
Yeah, that's why I take a cold shower first thing every morning. I
I
wake
run
up.
and then do.
Oh yeah, hell yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wake up and I'm just about immediately in the cold shower because that's how I start my day. I seek out uncomfort and know, like, every morning I'm like, God, I really don't want to do this. I'm doing this because I love myself, right? And then
Yeah, me too.
afterwards, I'm always like, oh my God, I am so glad I did that. And it's like an instant boost of energy, instant boost of confidence, all that stuff.
Confidence.
Exactly,
Mm,
yeah.
mm.
And when you start getting comfortable with getting uncomfortable, then getting comfortable will be even easier.
Yeah. Because we've gone from lower to higher, that relative low to high is much more pronounced than if we were
Hmm.
just doing slightly lower, slightly higher, and then we're back in that flatlining pattern.
Yep.
But when we do have our rewards and our enjoyable things, that they seem so much sweeter because of the lows that we've been to. And I guess that's what gratitude's about as well.
Oh yeah. And so let me go back to what we just talked about. Somebody who is at rock bottom, absolutely hating their life, I would say, instead of asking why me, because that enforces a victim mindset, and it enforces like we have no
Mm.
power,
Mm-hmm.
try asking why not me?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't it be you who goes through whatever you're going through, right?
Yeah. I love
Because
that you mentioned the victim mindset because 100% once you step up and say, I'm a master, not a victim, and you choose that identity for yourself, everything shifts.
yeah, absolutely, it's all a choice. A refuse like deciding to not make a choice is a choice, right? If you want to stay in the
Mm,
victim mindset, it's completely fine. Just
mm,
know that you're making the choice to do it, right? It's all optional.
I love that.
Now that also like it's simple and it's not easy, right? So like,
100%.
yeah, making the choice is very simple, and also making the choice is not easy. Staying committed to the choice, not easy. It's very worth it though. Very fulfilling.
I found that all I had to do is make this one choice today. That's all I had to do. And then tomorrow, I have to decide if I'm going to choose again. But
Hmm.
each time I did choose, I got more confident and I knew I could do it. And I looked back and I said, well, I did it last winter. I got in the shower, so I can do
Yeah.
it this winter as well. Tell me, how cold does it get there in your winter when you're having a cold shower?
Oh, the coldest is low single digits.
Wow.
May like it's a humid climate too, so it feels colder than what it is. It's like low
Wow.
single digits and it's Fahrenheit. Um,
Yeah.
or like very barely touching the negatives. And
Right.
then you got
Because
wind
we're,
chill on top of that.
yes. So is your shower an outdoor shower? Mine actually is.
No, I haven't upgraded to that yet, and I would love to have an outdoor shower.
Oh, it's only because it's just the hose basically
Oh,
cheaply
really?
connected outdoors. Yeah.
Wow, you were living lavishly. Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I actually do live in a shed basically.
Hell yeah.
That's a whole other story. But I'm on um like the Celsius system and we get to like low, well, zero and slightly below zero, but that's
Hmm.
to you, that's the 32-degree mark.
Hmm.
So we don't get much lower than that here. So yours is a lot more hardcore than my cold shower.
Well, it also depends on the climate as well. Is it humid out there or is it dry?
I'm one of those people who can't feel humidity, but I don't think it's humid. But we're
Fair
we're
enough.
2 hours from the coast, so probably not that humid.
Okay, I got you. See, I was told by people from dry climates that the heat in humid climates and the cold in humid climates are so much more intense than in dry climates. So like
Mm,
it could get up to 110 in a dry climate. And I've had people tell me that they preferred the 110 out in Arizona than
mm,
93 on a sunny day in Florida because
yeah,
it felt so much thicker. It was so much more,
oppressive.
yeah, basically, yeah,
Yeah,
unbearable.
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean, actually. Yeah. So no, we don't have that level of humidity at all. No.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, did you want to sort of add anything else? Because I know that I find you really inspiring and your journey, and I'm sure many other people do. Did you want to kind of add any other thoughts to someone who might be seeing this and think, wow, maybe I can change my whole life?
Yeah, coming from a guy who had literally everything taken from him that he worked for,
Mm,
um, you are so much more than what you like. You're so much more than what you do. You're so much more than what quote unquote happens to you, right?
yeah.
I've gained the belief that everything happens for me, not to me,
Yeah.
right? Um, who we are, who you are, is fully malleable. You can change it anytime that you want. It's completely up to you. And all it takes is a decision and committing to that decision.
Yeah. And I would add to reward each little step along the way,
Oh,
as
absolutely.
you were doing. And also, what keeps me going is knowing that the stuff that I've learned the hard way might save someone else from going through the same level that I went through, or at least help someone back out of the same kind of state.
Yeah, that's exactly why I started making or posting videos on social media, because at my lowest, I had no one who could understand what I was going through.
Me
Um,
too.
and I, so I took up that role. I became who I needed at my lowest. I provide tips and advice for my niche right now is people who've had a stroke or a TBI, because I've had both more than once. Well, more than one TBI, stroke, surgeries, whatever. Anyways, um, I have been in those people's shoes, like directly in those shoes, and I made it out. And if I can do it, I know anyone can. It just takes, like I said, making a decision and deciding to commit to that decision. You know?
Yeah, and it's so hard. The decision itself is so hard, but it's so
Yeah.
worth it, right?
Yeah. Like I said, it's simple and it's not easy.
Yeah, it's life or death, that decision. So choose life.
Yeah. There are so many people that are alive nowadays, and there are so few people that are living, right?
Mm,
That are conscious through their days and that are actually feeling good about themselves. So,
yeah.
would you want to continue being alive and surviving, doing the bare minimum, or would you rather start working to become your best self and being healthier, both in your mind and in your body, and actually living, right? Because there's a difference
Mm.
between being alive and living.
Yeah, but we can all make small steps and start moving towards the land of the
Hmm.
living, right?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We
And
can
I believe
start
that.
today. Every
Yeah,
every action where we put our action first and our dopamine seeking second is discipline, and it that is how we start to move forward, right?
oh yeah. And if you believe in God, which I didn't for a period of my life, um, or if you believe in the Creator, I believe that living is our inherent right, and being alive, I feel like that is what nefarious entities want us to do,
Mm,
because it serves them and it does not serve us.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I might wrap it up there and end the recording. But thank you so much for sharing like your wisdom, experience, and the rock bottom stuff you had to go through. That other people might see that and be inspired by the light that you have, shone for their journey.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and blowing my mind with the facts that you know just off the top of your head,
Yeah,
and for
it's
sharing your
it's
story more too.
yeah, it's been great, and we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Tristan. See ya.
Yes, ma'am.